Let's start off with a simple question. What does productivity mean to you? And what I'm talking about in terms of productivity is if, let's say, you have a to do list, and typically you set a task of, let's say, 5 things to do in a day from high priority to low priority. There's different ways of setting a to do list and like your productive capabilities throughout the day. But to me, productivity means like finishing off my to do list and making sure that by the end of the day, I can relax or go for a workout, which is exactly what I did right now, prior to this, of course. And then ultimately, at the end of the day, have a productive day. This is a concept that I have been struggling with for like the past couple of years, I would say, especially as I've started to dive more into my creative side with like this YouTube channel and then like my other project called Embassy Life in DC, which you probably have heard me gone on and on about. And so, like, what I mean by productivity is there's different definitions according to your own personal experience and your values that you hold. Like, you have all these productivity gurus on YouTube now that are constantly telling you to be productive and to embrace the hustle culture and to get stuff done. You know what I mean? I can't curse because YouTube would flag that, but it's just like, it's interesting to me, like, in my head, what is a productive day versus what is not a productive day. So, for example, we have a long weekend this weekend. Like, it's 3 days because Monday is President's Day, February 19th, if I'm getting those dates right, but it doesn't matter. And the thing is that, like, I approach the weekends with one day for a time to rest and to kind of like recover from like the sheer absurdity of the week, and then also one day to finish off the Embassy Life in DC project that I have to do, and then like also record a bunch of YouTube videos that I like auto schedule in advance. And so, like, for me, productivity is when I schedule everything out. You know, I'm a big scheduler on my Google Calendar. I have a very like ADHD personality type where I need to be in control of my schedule. Otherwise, it starts to get to me after a while, and it's like I'm not independent as I used to be. And then you delve into pure insanity after that. Half a joke there. But the thing is that like productivity to me means that I'm getting all the stuff that I want to done. But it's an irony because at the same time, like having so many things to do in a week stresses me out to the point where I feel the need to finish this list and then come up with a new list. So it's interesting because like as I kind of go throughout my life and I grow older, my definition of productivity has changed, you know what I mean? And it's like I've learned to embrace these different sides of myself from, there's work obviously, there's my creative side which I want to make time for, and then there's also like looking after my body, like, fitness and working out and stuff like that. It relates to the previous video that I did about like needing to like do a physical win, a creative win, and a personal win, like 3 or 4 wins like in a day, every day to like make sure you live a complete life. And so like it's funny because like when I was younger, and I'm not too old, like I'm 28, right? So it's like I speak like I'm 45 or something. When I was younger, I would beat myself up really, consistently in my head if I like didn't have a productive day. You know what I mean? Like if I didn't do something that was like related to work, or if I didn't like, let's say, like work out, right? And like that would get to me after a while, and like the day after I'd be like, okay, that was a really terrible day. I gotta make sure that like I don't do that again. And like the thing that I realized about like a productive day versus a not productive day is the way that you choose to interpret it. And so I know that sounds a little bit confusing, so let me kind of maybe dive into an example of what a productive day is versus a not productive day. And so, like, to me personally, this might change depending on your viewpoint, but a productive day is when I can, during the week, I like do work, and then I also try to work out at night as much as I can to, stay sane. So those are productive days, right? Because like I'm getting stuff done for my job, which lets me like live and like have a roof over my head. And then I'm also working out because like I work an office job, so it's like I don't work construction, I don't do labor or none of that. And I need to make sure that I use my body in order to keep up all my gains and all that stuff. So it's just like that's during the week. And then during the weekend, my productive days are when, like, for example, on Sundays, typically, when I do pretty much I allocate the majority of the day to embassy life and DC stuff, and then I work out. Sometimes it's a lot of embassy life and DC stuff, now with YouTube as well, and then I don't work out. And you make costs and benefits analysis, like depending on how much time you have during the day. And of course, it's largely contingent on your mental state as well. But to me, like, that's also a productive day because I, worked on my creative stuff. I may or may not have worked out. And then on other days that I don't do any of that stuff, like let's say I, clean the house, I take care of errands, like regular life stuff, that is productive. So like to me, productivity is like writing a to-do list and then finishing everything off. But then at the same time, like you have your non-productive days where, like, I'll give you an example. This week beat me up like really badly, metaphorically. But it's just like this week was crazy. Like there was so much work to do for my regular job. And then I just got into one of those modes where I was like constantly like working on like checking my emails and like publishing content, going to events. And then like the week just passed by and I was like, I need to like just relax, like I can't do anything right now. Like I'm just dead, you know what I mean? So like all I did yesterday, for example, was just, go to the gym and then go grocery shopping, and then I was dead at the end of like the day. So it's just like that to me wasn't a productive day because like I didn't advance one of my goals to escape the matrix or whatever. And it was just like a throwaway day, you know what I mean? But, you need those days because if you don't have those days, that leads to cumulative burnout, and then you start not enjoying life, you can't do work as effectively. And so like you need those days to be able to kind of recharge from life. That also kind of ties back to like the nature video that I did about like trying to recharge from life and everything being so fast. So it's just like the concept of a productive day versus a non-productive day, I feel like also varies depending on the culture that you live in. And so what I mean by that is like, for example, I'm half French, half American, right? So like on the American side of things, like we have a staunch viewpoint about like the 40-hour work week. It's like it's one of those like 1930s concepts that just like it's slowly starting to change. I think the pandemic did a great job of like one of the few silver linings with all that BS that happened was the fact that COVID came around and then everything was remote for the longest of times, and then like companies were just like, well, like people can get their work done remotely, like let's leave it at that. And then the pandemics started to dry up, you know what I mean, like, and like people were getting vaccinated and like all that stuff, and like companies then started like switching their approach, and they were like, wait, we need to actually justify like the rent that we have on these office buildings because like they can't work from home all the time. They obviously love their social life, and they need to come in to be able to be even more productive. And it's just like that type of thinking. Like I'll talk about like my viewpoints about remote work versus not remote work, and maybe hybrid as well, which is like what it seems like a lot of jobs are going for nowadays. And I don't have a problem with hybrid. I just have a problem personally when the option is taken away from me like altogether. That's the stuff that I can't stand, and that's when I really start to get headstrong. But that's a different thing entirely. And I realize like not every industry can work remotely. Like construction guys can't obviously, work remotely. They have to be on the job site as 24 hours a day, and unless like the whole field gets automated. But show me a Boston Dynamics robot that can like do electrician circuitry, with nimble fingertips. It's not here yet. So anyway, going back to what I was saying before, in the US, they have this like very staunch like 40-hour work week and even plus, and that's regarded as normal. It's like you work so damn hard for so little, especially with nowadays with like inflation and like the dollar not being as worth in terms of purchasing power anymore. Groceries are still expensive as heck. It's getting better, but it's still tough for a lot of people. Like I'm fortunate in the sense where like I don't have a family, I mean like kids and like a significant other, and like I don't have any dependents, so it's like I just have to look after myself. So thankful for that, but like a guy's struggling, you know what I mean? Like wages are not as high as they should be, and they haven't been keeping up over the past, like, 20 years or something like that. So it's just like you have it's just a realization that you like come to think about. It's just like you work so damn hard, so much is taken out for taxes, and I'm not against taxes either. I recognize they're an important part of what makes society work. But when you see like your government sending $90 billion to fund wars in Ukraine, Israel, and what, Yemen now, it just makes you wonder, like, you work so damn hard, you pay so much in taxes depending on where you live. Florida, I think there's no income tax, but DC has like a high series of taxes. And it just stupefies you at the fact that like they can just do that. Like it's all about control at the end of the day. With like hybrid work, being remote, not having the option at all. It's all about control at the end of the day. And I think what you have to realize is like at the end of the day, you're just a cog in the machine, no matter like what they say in terms of like, oh, we're all family. That's BS. Like, no, you're just a you're just a paycheck to the company that you work for, and that's the way that it is. But anyway, going back to like the work culture, like idea like in the US. So it's just like they work you so damn hard, they drain you of everything, and then you can barely afford to pay anything. So there's that, right? And then, for example, you have Europe, where it's not all perfect either, okay? Like they have high taxes for a reason, but they make up for it with free healthcare and the education system. But at least, like over there, they have an absurd amount of vacation days. I didn't realize that until I started talking to people that were from there. And the irony is that I'm from France, but I'm talking about like living there, like full time. You know what I mean? Like not just growing up there and then moving away. And like it's the exact opposite, where it's like they don't get paid as much. I will admit that. That's one thing that I realized as well. They don't get paid as much in terms of like gross salary, but they have the healthcare that's even better. They have what, more than 35 days of vacation or something like that. The maternity leave, the paternity leave is like even better. So it's like you take your pick, right? It's like you get worked to death for a higher paycheck in the US and you make more, but then after taxes, they take that all the way. And then in Europe, you have more vacation days and better insurance. You get paid less, but taxes are still high. So at the end of the day, the notion of productivity varies from geographical place to geographical place. One extreme example that they are facing right now, actually, if you look at the news. So in Japan, they've always, and I forget the exact like vocabulary word in Japanese for it, but they have a very, like, you think you're worked to death in the US. In Japan and South Korea, it's the exact like extreme. It's like they pull 120-hour work weeks, like even regular office people and stuff like that. But everyone does that, and then that leads to like massive burnout. Suicide rates go through the roof because of the fact that like it's just life is not enjoyable anymore. The younger generation now doesn't really, apparently from the news that I've watched, like the younger generation doesn't have the drive to work these 120-hour work weeks, which makes them lazy in the eyes of the older generation, which is like half the country because like their birth rate is declining. So it's just like they have a history of overworking culture, which I find incredibly fascinating because I refuse to do that. Like 40 hours, that's it. You know what I mean? Like overtime, yeah, if it's available, but even that to like a certain extent here in the US. So it's like the notion of productivity, it's like it's the law of diminishing returns. It's like human beings are not machines, right? It's like I fully believe that like the way that society is heading with like YouTube and all these like social media platforms like becoming bigger and bigger, creators starting their own businesses. Heck, even my other project, Embassy Life in DC, like I don't make a lot off of it. In fact, nothing, but one day that would be nice, you know what I mean? But it's like the doors are opening if you explore alternate paths in life. And this notion of like overworking yourself to death for the productivity aspect that, you work for, 40 hours a week for 65 years in the US and then you retire. And even then, you can't even fully retire because Social Security goes bankrupt. It's just like, it just makes you wonder, all of that stems from the idea of a productive day versus a non productive day. And then ultimately, the question, what do you consider productivity? Something to think about.